Hi, today we're going to be showing you how to assemble your L-shaped VertDesk V3. We're going to be going through our paper instructions as we do it for you on video. But before we get started, I wanted to cover just a quick few things, a couple tips that I have, recommendations. The first is that you want to use a cordless drill. There are a lot of wood screws for this product. It is a commercial grade product and it's all about stability. So we highly recommend you use a cordless drill. It'll make your life a lot easier. With the cordless drill, you'll see that we recommend on the assembly, required for assembly, D is a square bit driver head. This is also very important because it will make screwing the screws into the surface much easier. And the last thing that I want to say before we go ahead and get into the assembly is that you make sure when you're attaching our hex rod into the legs that you push the legs to the absolute lowest position. It's very important that you do this. Let's go ahead and get started with the assembly of the VertDesk V3. So before we go ahead and assemble our frame, we want to join the two pieces of the surface together. So you'll want to locate your joining or spanning bracket. And this is a good thing to have a second set of hands on just to make sure that everything remains tight and flush when you connect these two pieces together. So we'll take our plate and we'll align it to the holes on the surface and take your hardware. And I'll make sure with the cordless drill that you don't have the torque setting too high. You don't want to strip these out. And I'll just start with the first two. And with your help, you want to make sure this is pushed in here tight. So we push on this, and then we can go ahead and put another couple screws on the other side, joining the two pieces together. Once that's connected, we should be good, and we should be ready to move on to what is labeled as step one, and we'll start to build our frame. So for the first step here with building our frame, we want to locate a couple things. The motor, number one, your left leg assembly, which will actually be on the right-hand side when everything is upside down. And you can tell on the leg, actually, it will label it as a left leg, and it will show you a motor. So my recommendation here really is, it works a little bit better if you lay this leg down first. It allows you to kind of see into the motor or the gear input. Then we'll take our motor, we position it this way. You can see the motor is away from you, and there are two mounting holes on the upper support. We'll go ahead and we'll slide the hex rod in to the motor. We can look down into the gear input. You get this slid in, slide this down, make sure your motor's down, and we can tip this over. Get this set up. So now that we've got this part connected, we can actually go ahead and use our hardware here. It's labeled as F and G, they're bolts, and you can actually screw these in by hand. We'll go ahead and attach the motor now. Make sure you get these aligned properly so you can see the holes, and then just hand screw them in. After we've attached our motor to our left leg assembly with our hex rod, we're ready to actually fully tighten down the bolts here for the motor bracket. So you want to use what we have labeled as M on our instruction sheet. It's the bigger of the two Allen wrenches. And you can go ahead, just tighten those down. For step two, we're going to be bringing on our right leg assembly, which is on the left-hand side here as we're upside down. And we'll be attaching or inserting the hex rod into the gear input, similar to what we did on the left leg assembly. For this part, you will want to use the tool that we've included to assist in case it doesn't slide in naturally. And I'll show you what I mean here. As we bring the leg up and we get the hex rod sort of aligned, you want to get this aligned with the gear input. Sometimes these will slide in naturally, not always, and that's why we've included the tool. You can see we want to put that right on the hex rod. And it's important that you turn it away from you. You won't need much, maybe about a 1/6 of a turn, and as you're turning it, it should slide on naturally. And once it does, you can align the upper support to your pre-drilled holes in the surface. and you're now ready to move on to the next step. For step 3, we're going to be attaching our cross support to our legs. You'll need to have, of course, your cross support, and you'll want to also include the corner bracket here. So the first thing that we will do is take our cross support, and we'll want to go ahead and slide that on to the right leg. And this should kind of help you hold that in place once it's on there. And now we'll take our corner bracket, and you can see there are on here some threaded components that are attached to it, and this is to attach the return side. You want to make sure that that part is out and towards the return. So we align these holes to the cross support bracket, and we slide our cross support over, and we'll want to make sure that all of the holes here are aligned so that we can pass through and use our mounting bolts, which we have here. And you can see these bolts have star washers. We want to make sure we get those on there as well. But what we do is we get these all aligned. And then we can go ahead and hand tighten them. And a tip here as you're doing this, you may find that the actual corner bracket sometimes covers inside the holes, and you can actually kind of twist this down and towards you, and it will open it up. It'll make it a little bit easier to access those holes. And then again, just hand tighten that. We don't want to fully tighten these bolts yet. And then you want to do this here for both sides. We're now ready to move on to step 4. For step 4, we're going to be using our third leg, our return leg, and our second motor with our smaller hex rod. And we'll be attaching this motor and hex rod to our third leg. So much like we did with the other motor leg, it's recommended to tip the leg down so that you can see down into the leg. And I always recommend putting the hex rod in first. Once you do that, you'll have a better opportunity to align the motor. We position it this way. You can see the motor is away from you, and get this aligned. Now, if like this one, if you see that it isn't going in easily, what you can do is tip this leg back up, use the tool that we've included, and just put this onto the hex rod, and you kind of just turn it a little bit towards you. And as you're doing that, you should be able to slide the motor on, and then it's in place. And now we're ready to mount the motor to our leg. And you can hand screw these in or hand tighten at first. And then once you have them hand tightened, you can go ahead and fully tighten those down. Again, using the bigger of the 2 Allen wrenches. So for step 6, we're going to be sliding the cross support over the return leg and connecting that to our corner bracket. So for this part, we're also going to want to make sure that we do not fully tighten these components once we're done. We'll want to have a little bit of play here so that we can kind of move things around and get them attached to the surface. For this, we will also be using these bolts that have the star washers. So I've got these all ready to go. So we'll bring this down here. Now we'll take our cross support. We go ahead and we slide this on. To our return leg. And then we go ahead and we slide it on to our corner bracket, and we can hand tighten these down. Now that we've got the cross support hand tightened down, we're ready to move on to our next step, which is step 7. Now this is where we're going to be attaching our frame to our surface, and it's important here when we put our U-channels on the desk that we mount these before we actually mount the rest of the frame. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So as we slide these parts on and get these aligned, and a quick tip is when you look at the U-channel, you'll notice that there's holes close to the end on one side and they're more set in on the other. This is the motor side. The portion that is closest with the holes to the end is on the motor side. And you'll see what I mean when you align that to your surface and you see the pre-drilled holes. Now the reason why, again, we want to attach this first is just because the cross support is in the way when we're putting the screws on the far side of the U-channel. So my recommendation here really is just to slightly move your frame out of the way. Sort of push it back, and then we have better access to these holes. And now we can go ahead and start drilling these in. And again, you don't want to fully or over tighten, the screws. So just beware so you don't strip these holes out. And I always recommend that you kind of go from one end to the corner, just so that we make sure that there aren't any holes that are going to be covered up unintentionally here. And now you're ready to fully screw in this U-channel, and then we can go to the next one. So as we go to our second U-channel, we're going to notice right away that there isn't a hex rod underneath this. This is really just used for support with the work surface and joining the two surfaces together as well. But same thing here, to make it easier for you to attach this to the surface, you can just go ahead and push the frame sort of out of the way, and it will make it easier for you to screw down the U-channel. Like we did with the other one, I would just start on the two opposite corners. And then you should be good to finish the rest of the holes. All right. Now that we've attached both U-channels, we're ready to go ahead and align the upper supports of our frame to the surface, and we can go ahead and connect all of those down then as well. Now that we've gone ahead and attached our frame to our surface and put the wood screws in to connect the upper supports and the U-channels, we're ready to go ahead and tighten down our cross supports. So there's going to be 8 bolts here. You want to use the smaller of the 2 Allen wrenches included, and we can fully tighten again to make sure that everything is nice and secure. We're now ready to move on to step 8. Step 8 is going to be connecting the electronics to the desk. So we have our control box and our switch. We have a standard switch today. You could also potentially be mounting a programmable switch, and that would be very similar when you're attaching that to the desk. So we'll go ahead and start with our control box. And you can see here we've got the inputs for our motors, we've got our switch input and our power. Really whichever you prefer, it doesn't matter which orientation you use. You just want to align these to the 2 pre-drilled holes on the return side. Get those aligned, and then you can go ahead and mount this to the desk. Now that we've attached our control box, we're ready to attach the switch. You'll see we do have a warning label. This is really for the safety of the user because these desks are powerful, as we're required to put this on the switch. You can go ahead and pull this off now. You can see there's a little bit of the residual paper left on the switch. Not a problem because this will be all hidden underneath the switch. Grab your hardware. Align this with the hole. You'll see there's 3 holes here. If you have a programmable switch, we have the standard switch again. You'll only be using 2. If you have the programmable, you'll be using the wider set of holes. Get that aligned. And go ahead and mount this. Now that we've attached our switch to our desk, our control box is set up, we're ready to start wiring up the desk. You'll see we do include 2 wire management with adhesive on the back. These are used really to kind of keep those wires nice and tidy that come from the motors and the switch. So we'll go ahead and we'll pull the adhesive off, the tape off the back, the adhesive, and then we'll just go ahead and place these. So when we're placing these, we want to make sure that we just get these in a nice place that it will work best for your setup. I recommend on both sides of the control box. The adhesive is very sticky, so you definitely want to make sure you get this right. And now we're ready to run our wires. The last wire is our power cord. You can go ahead and plug that in. And now that all of our wires are set, we're ready to go ahead and flip the table over and do the startup operation. Lastly, we do have a couple clips here if you wanted to do some additional wire management. You can see with our switch, that's really why it's included here. If you would like, you can put clips here to keep these wires nice and tidy. And same process there. We've got the wood screws that you can attach from the same set of hardware that we use to attach the frame to our surface. So we're ready to go ahead and flip the desk over. Now that we've completed the assembly of our L-shaped VertDesk, we're ready to go ahead and start up the operation. So the first thing you want to do is plug in the power to the desk. Once you've got the power set up, we're going to go ahead and press the down button. We have the standard switch here. The process is the same if you have the programmable switch. You simply want to press and hold the down button. You'll see the desk go down and then up. It's now ready to start operation. You're now ready to use your VertDesk V3 L-shape.